Good morning. On behalf of the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association, I would like to thank you for taking the time today for this very important opportunity to share and express our beliefs that every child from preschool through grade 12 and beyond deserves access to a quality music education. My name is Tina Bennett, and I am the current PMEA State President and a 36-year veteran teacher at the Clarion Limestone Area School District. It is no secret that 2020 has been a unique year. Due to the COVID virus, we have made the decision to host our annual Advocacy Day virtually, as so many organizations have had to do. PMEA has always been a trusted resource both in Harrisburg and with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. We are cognizant of the challenges our state and local leaders have and will face, and we are here to offer our support as we all navigate these uncharted waters. Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn." That is the focus of what we are talking about today. Music education is the perfect opportunity to get the learner involved. When COVID-19 forced the shutdown of so many businesses and schools, families found themselves in a difficult situation of isolating themselves from other family members, support systems, loved ones, and friends. As the days and weeks wore on, so did the strain of the emotional, physical, as well as financial uncertainty began to weigh on our students and families. As teachers began transitioning to online learning, they started to reconnect with their students. It became completely obvious that these children needed their music teachers. Their social and emotional well-being was at risk. Music, as it always has been, became a way for everyone across the globe to cope with the stress they were feeling. If music can help during a global pandemic, how can we stand by and not support continuing music education for our students? The decision to shut down the schools was a difficult one, and it challenged our teachers to reinvent their classes, and that's exactly what they did. Throughout today's Advocacy Day event, we will highlight just a few of these amazing and creative programs. Now, I would like to introduce our PMEA Advocacy Chair, who will MC the remainder of today's program. Please welcome Mark Despotakis.
Thanks, Tina. Good morning to you, and good morning to all of you joining us. Before we get into things today, I just want to send my personal thanks to Tina for all the work that she has done over the past 2 years as PMEA president, and certainly over the past few months, as she has had to navigate not only what's happening in her world, her school, but also leading PMEA through these extraordinary times. And throughout this presentation, you're going to hear about some of the things that PMEA has done and will continue to do. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual Advocacy Day. Things look very different for us on this Advocacy Day. Normally we're in the Rotunda in the Capitol building in Harrisburg. Not this year. This year we're joining you from our homes all across the state as we deal with this COVID-19 situation. But that doesn't mean our advocacy for education and music education stops. In fact, it probably ramps it up even more. This morning we're going to talk about what PMEA's policy asks are, explain how you can get involved with those. We're going to show you some of the great things happening across the state as it comes to music education. And we're going to talk about what PMEA is doing moving forward as we deal with these extraordinary times. So we're going to begin talking about what PMEA has done. Just last week, I had a chance to speak with Terry Myers, who is the PMEA Mentor Chair. We talked a little bit about what she did in her classroom, her virtual classroom, here in the past few months, as well as the PMEA webinar series. Take a look. So if you could start telling us a little about what your teaching experience was when everything closed and how you personally had to react in your school.
Well, for me personally, I was very fortunate that we already had a elementary music Facebook page where we had been for years highlighting all of the kids' successes and trying to share with families what they had been doing in classrooms. So we immediately switched to using that tool to deliver live instruction. So within the first couple weeks, we were giving our elementary general music classes over Facebook live instruction, and families could jump right on and participate with us in that way. So that was the first thing we did.
And so we have a clip of that that we've shown here of you kind of doing that virtual lesson to them. You missed kind of the interaction that way, but I believe you did do some stuff where you were still able to interact with your students in some way.
Yes, we were very intentional in choosing our repertoire through our lessons so that we could provide that interaction. And while we can't see them or hear them, we gave them opportunities to make song selections and just different ways they could influence the way the lesson flowed. And definitely the biggest thing we missed was being able to facilitate learning through seeing what they needed. We just kind of had to guess by the level of interaction we were getting, whether they were enjoying what we were doing and participating, or if it was time to move on.
Right. Yeah. So that's, yeah, when you're in the classroom setting, you're much easier to be able to get a sense of that. So, yeah, certainly a challenge all teachers are facing, but certainly in a music classroom, there's a lot more of those nuances. So aside from the work that you do as an elementary music teacher, you volunteer your time for PMEA as the mentor chair. But arguably, as I just was joking with you a little bit ago, you've become the PMEA webinar chair, as one of the things that PMEA did was reacted with this webinar series, this PMEA Cares webinar series. And so you helped to organize all that and orchestrate all that, and we'll show the link where folks can find that. But I imagine you've picked up a lot of great insight into what teachers, not only in Pennsylvania, but around the country are doing.
Yes, so the entire PMEA Cares Together We Teach series grew out of just perfect timing. I was meeting with two colleagues, Scott Sheehan from Hollidaysburg Area High School and Stacy Paperon from Grove City College. We were to give a webinar on curriculum. Between the time we set the meeting to work on this webinar and actually having the meeting, schools went from 2 weeks off to indefinite closures, and the PMEA spring conference was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of all came to a head where the number one resource for professional development was no longer available, and teachers didn't really have a resource for how to get into online learning. So from those two colleagues and I, we started discussing our own needs, and from that conversation grew, everybody must be having these needs. So we developed the webinar series to try to meet everybody's needs. At the very first webinar, it was an open forum where we asked people beforehand to tell us what they needed. And we got fantastic response from PMEA membership, and we developed a series based on what those needs were.
And so give us, if you could, just a couple of the takeaways that maybe you picked up from this. There was those aha moments.
Well, I think by and large, everybody was in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had the same needs, and didn't matter where you were teaching or what grade level you were teaching or what subject. I think that the number one need everybody had repeatedly was, how do I get to my kids? How do I communicate with them? How do I interact with them? How can I meet their needs when I feel so incredibly distant from them? So that spoke to me, saying that PMEA teachers' number one concern was their students, and they just wanted to facilitate learning for them the best they possibly could. Probably the greatest second thing I noticed was they wanted to find a way that they could still make music with them. And they really got a sense, once they were able to reach out with their students, that they were really missing that. They were really missing the opportunity to make music with their peers and with their teachers. So those were the two biggest takeaways, was that we needed to facilitate the best possible way we could, was that to provide that connection. I think, unfortunately, one of the outcomes is that we discovered there is no substitute for making music together with other people. There just is not a substitute for that. And we can certainly facilitate distance learning the best we possibly can. We can create music the best we possibly can asynchronously, but it's just not the same as it is to come together.
Right, and I mean that's the perfect point. I think you make an absolutely important point that we all want to be back in the classroom as soon as possible. But to the point in the webinars, I just think it's so incredible. One, to see how quickly educators pivoted, and then how, to your point, we were all in this together. Nobody knew, so everybody was then willing to get together and start sharing that information, which I think it just speaks so much to what music is. We're already bringing people together when we're able to be together and make music, but in this environment, when we can't, we're all brainstorming and figuring out how to make that happen.
Oh, that absolutely has happened. So throughout this series, people have become more and more comfortable with sharing
Mm,
via whatever platform they're using, which I'm sure is true around the entire world.
right.
But the webinars, although structured with a presenter, in every single case has ended with an open discussion by all the participants in sharing the best tools they found, asking questions to make their instruction even better and their connection with their students even better. So people have come up with some fantastic solutions for their individual situations, and those have been shared through PMEA and allowed the entire state to um, just come up with a wealth of resources for how to facilitate learning.
And I think the hope is, and I would probably say the expectation is that as we move into whatever the fall looks like and whatever the spring looks like, at some point we're all back together. There's no question. We just don't know when that is. That this spirit of sharing will continue, and I think maybe that's one of the great lessons and takeaways from this, that we're all going to still continue to. We've always shared, but I think it's going to be in a different way now because we've had this. We were kind of forced to.
Oh, I agree. I think that there's been almost a change in norm of the expectation of connections people can make through distance now.
Mhm.
I think that people are, like I said, much more comfortable with it. But I think people are also have kind of raised their expectations for sharing resources. So I think that's going to be a wonderful positive thing that comes out of this.
I love that, to raise their expectations for sharing. That's a good
Yeah.
way to put it. Terry, thank you so much for taking some time for what you're doing with your students, but what you're doing for PMEA, which thus is doing work for music educators across the state and, of course, students across the state. We appreciate you taking some time.
My pleasure.
So that's the first of a few of the student performances that you're going to see here this morning. Those are students from the Northern Bedford County School District. They created a virtual choir. Now, we know that these virtual choirs that we have seen are no replacement for classroom music and being together and making music in person. But it was an alternative. It was a way for people to join together, to come together and make music in some way. And we're going to be featuring some of those throughout our presentation this morning. So stay tuned for a few more of those. I'll also remind you that in the email you received this morning from PMEA had information on how you can contact your legislatures. And it takes just seconds. We've written the letter for you. All you need to do is click on the link, fill out your personal information. It will find your members of the General Assembly, address the letter to them, and you'll just hit send. We'll talk a little bit more about our policy asks and what is in that letter in just a few minutes. But I wanted to remind you that you did get that information, and we'd love for you to go and take a chance to do that. So already this morning, we talked a little bit about how things changed in K-12 education and how some teachers adapted. But how about higher education? Specifically, how about students that were student teaching, getting ready to graduate and head out into the field? Well, KDKA Television in Pittsburgh did a story on students at Slippery Rock who are doing just that. Let's take a look at that.
Just imagine trying to teach a student how to play the clarinet or how to sing when you're on a computer. Rick Dayton reports that's precisely what student teachers face this spring.
Teaching people how to teach others how to teach music, it's indescribable, truly.
This is my ukulele, and it's got 4 strings.
Look carefully at these photos taken when Slippery Rock University played in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Ireland. You could tell then how much Elena Stroud loves sharing music with others. Senior trombone player Nathan Turley was also on that trip.
Even if you've got to try and teach it 6 different ways, that commitment and that persistence to see your students succeed is probably one of the most important traits that a teacher can have.
They aren't just friends from the SRU marching band. They're also college seniors doing their student teaching and music education in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I made a musical Jeopardy recently, and I made that really interactive. There's listening exercises. There's things to keep kids up on the curriculum still while having some kind of fun technology.
Trying to find a way to do it without in person, it's definitely a challenge.
But Dr. Kathy Malego says this class of 2020 was ready.
My students are paired one-on-one with students in the public schools to teach lessons. So they've been doing this for 5 years, and it runs their full junior year.
So they sing.
Now I know my ABCs. Next time won't you sing with me?
And they play. And they teach as they learn.
It is not how I thought I would end my time at Slippery Rock, but I'm fortunate that I still get to end it on a pretty positive note.
The perfect ending for these musically gifted teachers to be. Reporting from home, Rick Dayton, KDKA News.
So how cool was that one? A band performing. Of note, that piece they were playing is called Courage, and it was composed by Henry Fillmore, a very well-known composer of marches in the early part of the last century. And it was called Courage. It was composed in 1919 at the end of the Spanish flu pandemic. So here we are just over 100 years later. The folks in Indiana County thought that was the perfect piece to play as a tribute to all who are showing courage during these extraordinary times. So that was fantastic, and we'll certainly see some more performances throughout the rest of the morning here. Again, I'll remind you to make sure you're sending an email to your legislators about our specific policy asks. You received that information in your email this morning, but if you did not, and you do want to do that, you can go to PMEA's website and go to our advocacy page, and we have that up on the screen for you right now, where you can very quickly send an email to your legislators to show support for some of our policy asks. And speaking of those policy asks, I promised that we would go through them this morning for you, so you understand what PMEA is looking at as far as the policy goes, not only at the General Assembly, but also at the Department of Education. So let me briefly go through these and also give you a little update on where we are on these policy asks. So the first one is something that's actually already happened. We're asking the General Assembly and the governor to maintain the basic education subsidy for the 2020-21 school year at the same level that funding happened at the 2019-2020 school year. And a budget has been passed and enacted, and that did happen. And it's very noteworthy that this happened, certainly because of the current economic conditions that we are in because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the legislature said, we are going to pass this budget nearly a month earlier than it is due. It's constitutionally due on June 30th. Pass this budget. It's a partial budget for most of government services, but for education, both K-12 and higher education, it actually is an entire 12-month budget. Level funded, which is a victory in these economic times, but the other major victory there is that it does provide school districts with the ability to appropriately plan and pass their budgets, which are due here at the end of this month. The second thing that we're asking for is about a fair charter school funding formula. So there is a funding formula in place in the state for all of K-12 education. What we're asking for is to make sure that the funding formula for charter schools is also done in a fair way. And today, when you send an email to your legislators, you're going to do two things. Number one, you're going to be thanking them for passing this budget that shores up public education in Pennsylvania, but you're also going to be asking them to take a look at this charter school funding situation and devise a formula, devise a plan that makes it more equitable, both for public school districts as well as charter schools. So those are the two main things that you're going to be asking for today in the email that you'll send to members of the General Assembly as well as the governor. We're also asking, as part of our policy platform, which was created before they passed a budget here about 2.5 weeks ago or so, we asked that the state maintain funding for school safety. Well, they not only did that, but they also added money to that fund. And they changed it a little bit so that it's not just about school safety, it's about school health. So some of those funds can now be used for things that your school will need to appropriately keep students and staff safe. Pennsylvania has done that by using some Pennsylvania money, but also some of the federal money that has been made available to states. So we certainly thank them for doing that and thinking about schools, especially in this budget that they have passed. We're asking for an increased allocation to the state system of higher education. That did not happen in this year's budget. It was level funded. That doesn't mean that something can't happen later in the budget year. So that is something that we will continue to monitor throughout the coming months. And if there is an opportunity, we will come back to you and ask for your assistance in helping us to ask for that with the members of the General Assembly. And our last two policy recommendations this year really have to do with the Pennsylvania Department of Education as well as the State Board of Education. We're asking the department as well as the State Board to review the standards, the Pennsylvania standards in the arts. As we know, they have not been reviewed in Pennsylvania for a number of years. PMEA has done some work to create a crosswalk document between the national standards as well as the Pennsylvania standards to help you in your teaching. But we think it's very important that PDE actually goes and does a thorough review of these standards. We'll be working with the department on that here in the next coming months. And again, that's something we may ask for your assistance for as well. And we're also asking for the department to reinstate a full-time staff member there who handles arts education, who's an arts education liaison for us within the department. At one time, there was a few full-time staffers who handled arts education. At this point, we're saying we would just love to have one full-time person in there, and that's been something that we have been asking for a number of years. If you want to learn more about these policy asks, again, visit our advocacy page where you can find all of that information and some further explanation on them. But again, we do ask you to take some time to please send that email to your legislators. It really does only take minutes. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk to Hugh Baird. And Hugh is actually a member of Senator Jim Brewster's staff in Harrisburg. And we wanted a chance to talk to him about what the budget means for education in Pennsylvania, as well as what a member of the Senate's feelings are about music and arts education. I spoke with Hugh last week. Take a look at our interview. Okay, so I want to begin talking about the budget in Pennsylvania, kind of unprecedented in a sense. Basically, a month before the budget needed to be signed into law constitutionally, we have this budget passed in Pennsylvania. Kind of a strange thing where part of it's for 5 months, but part of it's for the whole year. The good news is the part for us, at least the part of it's for the whole year's education. I'm curious if you could speak to a little bit of some of the details of the budget that was passed.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity to share Senator Brewster's thoughts. I know that he has been an extremely strong supporter of education throughout his career. He is a trained educator. He went to Cal State and has an education background. His family is very much involved in education. This is an extraordinary time for us all. I've been here in the General Assembly for about 35 years. We've never had this situation before. We are entering into a new budgetary phase, but the important part of this is there is a commitment, obviously, to continue education, to continue funding education and make it stable and secure throughout the year. Obviously, we're not in a situation where a significant amount of dollars could be added at this time. I mean, there's going to be an evaluation made throughout the year and based on the revenues and what may or may not be available from the federal government. That's part of it, but one of the things that was part of the budget agreement, as you mentioned, was the stability of education over the years. So at the very least, those in school districts have an opportunity to plan and to go forward. I'm encouraged by the fact that, in fact, in the Federal CARES Act, there was some money included in the CARES Act itself for grants to provide for the arts and education and music and that type of thing, and that's something that at least provides a little bit of an opening and a window going forward. This is, again, it's an extraordinary time, something that everybody's simply just going to have to adjust to. It's not something that you could have foreseen last year. You could have the revenues were on solid footing in December, and we have a pandemic that comes around the corner, and it is there was a significant impact on revenues. But the fortunate thing, or at least for schools, is that there's been a continuing year of appropriations as part of the budget process.
Yeah, and I can speak for the PMEA, and I mean we're just so thankful to what the General Assembly and the governor has done here to level fund education. I mean that's a win at this point, obviously, because we understand the budget situation. But to do this in such a way, as I mentioned before, with this foresight of doing it a month in advance, so schools now have this month to finish up their budgets. It's so important to schools, but it's so important to our membership, who unfortunately sometimes do have to fight a little bit extra harder in their school for music, art, even a library, a phys ed program. And we know that through the years, the Senator has been really committed to all of those subject areas, including music and the arts.
Yeah, that's an important factor. I mean, just in terms of a broad brush education program, it's fortunate that we're doing a budget based on a couple different steps, but the education part of it has been carried forward. We all have a hope that come November, perhaps there will be an opportunity to add to it. That's the discussion to be had then, based on revenues, based on the other amount of support that may or may not come in, how revenues respond. But it's really fortunate, I think, in terms of budgeting and process. I mean, schools have enough on their plate going forward, just in terms of planning and ensuring that there's social distancing in school and that the students are protected, the teachers are protected, administrators, all those that go and come in and out of school buildings, that there be protection. There's significant planning that's going to be in place for that, not only for the academic part, but the interscholastic competitions, those type of things. All those things have to be taken in consideration and planned. One of the important parts of this, though, is that relative to on the financial picture, at least there's a stable stream of revenue and something that school districts can count on going forward as they get underway with the other planning.
So as we know, the past couple months have been pretty crazy times in schools for students and for teachers and, for parents too, going through this. The next few months here are going to be for some planning. We know PDE has put out that first set of guidance to help schools and teachers begin to plan. But the fall is still going to be a bit crazy for everyone, because right now we don't know what that's going to look like. And if we could predict it now, I guarantee we're going to be wrong if we would revisit this in a month. So I guess I'm just curious, the senator has this background in education, and so he knows what these teachers and students are going through. What's the words of wisdom, maybe, from that perspective to help them all work through this?
Well, I think the senator's words of wisdom on education is, have faith, have commitment, be willing to adjust, be willing to accept changes in schedule, and have a great deal of patience as we all work through the issues we're going to face in this coming fall. I mean, this is something that we haven't seen in this country in 102 years. It's something that 100 years ago, they didn't have the technology that we have currently. They don't have the platforms to do, for example, what we're doing today. There's a ton of innovation in schools. They credited with that. They provide opportunities via the technology platforms that are available to expand learning and extend opportunities for students, which is a critical thing, not only for your reading, writing, and arithmetic, those things that are a basis, but it's critical that you have arts education, you have music education, you have all those things that are a part of developing a well-rounded student. Teaching, one of the things about teaching music and arts, it provides a way to reach students beyond the traditional subject area. Mm-hmm. It provides an opportunity for students to grow, to understand in a global perspective that a well-rounded student is an excellent student and is a tremendous leader going forward. And that's the type of thing that you get with music education. That's the type of thing you get with a focus on the arts. Now, all that being said, obviously you have to have the basics. You have to teach reading, writing, arithmetic, all the other subject areas that go into an education program. But music education, arts education, those types of things shouldn't be left behind in terms of those things that are essential to a well-rounded student.
Couldn't agree more. We couldn't have said it better. And Hugh, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us and stepping in for the senator today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Again, Mark, I just want to say on behalf of Senator Brewster, this opportunity to share, to speak on his behalf and share his thoughts. He's committed to education. He's been an educator all his life, committed to students, to reducing the economic disparity in school districts and closing that gap so that all students are given the opportunity to not only learn the basics, but also to grow with the arts, with music, and all those things that go into making a well-rounded student.
And we thank him for the support of that, and we look forward to working with him again on that in the future. Again, Hugh, thanks for taking some time.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Martin here, Chairman and CEO of my family's business, the Martin Guitar Company in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. It's June 1st. I'm still at home, but we're going back to work on Friday, and I'm so excited. Mark Despotakis asked me to say a few words to all of you who love music and the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association. These are challenging times. My family's business has been through many difficult times. This is absolutely one of them. Fortunately, music, as we have seen, has been a very important thing that people are using to help them through these difficult times. And that's the message that we can send. It's going to be a challenge. Budgets are going to be impacted by this, and we're going to have to work very hard to convince our state representatives that they need to do what's right to make sure that all the kids in Pennsylvania have access to music education. Stay healthy.
There is no life without its hunger. Each restless heart beats so imperfectly. But when you come and I am filled with wonder, sometimes I think I glimpse eternity. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can need. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Well, if that one doesn't get you, I don't know what will. Just amazing. 500 or so students participating in that virtual choir. And we saw a lot of these virtual ensembles all over the place, from all over Pennsylvania, all over the country, all over the world. They're amazing. They're fantastic. They're a great way for students to show off their talent. But we know that, as I said before, nothing can replace being back together in the classroom. And that's what we all want and can't wait to be making music together, hopefully soon. Speaking of the future, PMEA has already been doing work to plan for what the future might look like. How does PMEA react? How do you react? How does your school react? We're here to help. PMEA's past president, Henry Perlberg, is going to talk to us a little bit about exactly what PMEA is doing in that area.
Hello everyone, my name is Henry Perlberg, and I'm the immediate past state president of PMEA, and I'm happy to be here with you today on PMEA's virtual Advocacy Day. You know, advocacy can take many different shapes and forms, particularly during this time when we are socially distancing due to our current crisis with the COVID-19 pandemic. Music educators across the Commonwealth did a 180-degree pivot on a moment's notice back on March 13th to do the best we could to continue to engage our students in meaningful music-making opportunities and activities. Through very difficult circumstances, we did a very good job. In the many anecdotal examples I have seen and heard, it has been very evident to me of the care and concern that you have had for your students during this time. Some of the additional advocacy efforts that PMEA has undertaken during the past 3 months have been in communicating to you how to advocate to your administrators, parents, and community during this pandemic, as well as to the many decision makers across the state, as well as expressing our appreciation of their leadership during these difficult times. We have shared with them that although music education programs may look different for the foreseeable future, PMEA has been hard at work with our members, as well as with all music educators in Pennsylvania, in modifying curriculum and tools that we use to continue to deliver high-quality music experiences that are an essential part of a well-rounded curriculum. We have shared with school superintendents from all across Pennsylvania that our music educators are ready to work with committees in their school districts to help plan for the next school year. We've also joined forces with representatives from our partner arts organizations and associations in visual and media arts education, educational theater, and dance education, and have communicated to both Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania, Dr. Pedro Rivera, as well as the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, to remind them that music and arts have a vital role in the lives of our students and communities, especially right now. PMEA has been active with our membership over the past several weeks in discussing challenges and new ideas on how to plan for the next school year, including building a toolbox of resources that will be helpful for teachers in various parts of the state, their specialty of assignments, and the levels of students they are reaching. As research and data becomes available over the next several weeks on how we can safely implement our programs and curriculum, we will continue to update and share information. Lastly, and perhaps most pressing right now, we are in a time of great unrest in our country. The senseless acts of violence and injustice, along with the subsequent protests, highlight racism and inequities in our country, particularly directed at our Black and African American citizens. PMEA endeavors to continue to do all we can to challenge the systems of inequity and bias that perpetuate racism in our schools and communities. We will continue to work to be better through conversations, analysis, professional development, planning, and implementation, so we can achieve equity and respect for diversity in our music programs. Our full statement can be found on the PMEA website. Again, thank you so much, and let's continue our work together to meet these challenges and do what's best for our students.
So we're almost finished for today, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. I'll remind you again, if you haven't taken the time to send a message to your legislators and the governor, please do so. That information was provided to you in an email you received this morning, but you can also visit PMEA's advocacy site to find out more about that. And if you have the advocacy bug and want to learn more about policy and advocacy, on June 16th, NAM is putting on an advocacy summit. It's going to be in the afternoon that day, a few hours of some really great topics about local advocacy, federal advocacy, and some entertainment along the way as well. So you can find out more about that at nam.org. So before we finish up today, we wanted to give you some words of inspiration, something to send you off into the summer as a reminder that what you do is important. So we've called in a friend of ours who's been with us to provide some words of encouragement before. She's an Olympic medalist, but also a musician. She's also one of the most inspiring people that I know, Elizabeth Beisel.
Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Beisel, and I am an Olympic swimmer, and I have 2 Olympic medals. But more importantly, I'm here today because I've been playing the violin and piano since I was 3 years old, and I've enjoyed music for my entire life. It was my first love before swimming, and I wanted to extend my thanks to all of the teachers and educators that are here today watching this video. This world would not go round without you, and I think especially in a time like this, we need music to bring each other together and between COVID and all the other world events that are happening right now, you probably feel as though you teaching your students and your kids from home isn't really resonating with them. But I want you to know that the work that you're doing right now is not going to waste. Keep playing music, keep teaching these kids, even though we have an uncertain time and we don't know when school is going to go back in session. It is so important to continue to educate these kids, give them music, give them lessons, give them something to be happy about, because I know during these times we need something to bring us all together, and music is that thing. And you know, without my music educators and teachers growing up through my childhood and my teachers, my private lessons, I would not be the person that I am today. And those people and those figures played such a huge role in my life, and they gave me balance and purpose, and you are all doing that for all of your students. And so I want you to remember that the work that you're doing is not going to waste. It may look different than it ever has before, but please keep moving on. Music is the one universal language that we can all truly understand and relate to. And so I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you do for the future of our kids and implementing music into their lives, because it is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And although I'm not swimming competitively anymore, I can still play the violin and piano until the day that I die. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about music, is that it sticks with us forever. And you are giving somebody, a child, a student, something that they will have for the rest of their lives. And that is something that is, you can't put a price on that. It's irreplaceable. So again, please pat yourselves on the back. Thank you for dealing with this adversity with such grace and humility over the past few months, and as we continue on into the uncertain future. But I did just want to leave you guys with a little note of thank you and letting you know that you are making a difference. And please try to stay positive. See the light at the end of the tunnel, because although it may be a dark tunnel, we're all in this together. And I want you guys to know that you are appreciated, and I thank you. I wish I could be there in person with you all today, but I'm sure in the near future, once all of this blows over and everybody's healthy again, I will be sure to be at the next event. But until then, thank you. Keep playing music. Keep teaching music. Know that you are making a difference, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for those words of wisdom, and thanks all of you for joining us today. We do this for you. PMEA is here for our members. We're here to support you. We're here to support the students of music programs in Pennsylvania. As always, you can find more information on PMEA's website about the webinars and all of the other work that PMEA is doing. Please make sure you visit the advocacy page to find timely information about public policy at the federal and state level. And if you have anything that you need to reach out to specifically as far as an advocacy or policy concern, you can email me directly at advocacy@pmea.net. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you well and have a great week.